Hello, everyone. Good morning. Thanks for joining my session. We're going to start in a few minutes. I'm just going to wait maybe 2-3 minutes. I can see lots of participants are joining right now. Feel free to use the chat option to say hello or maybe where you are watching it from. Be great to know. I run a session at 10 o'clock and there were participants from all over the world: Australia, Dubai, Moscow, Ireland, and different parts of the UK and France. It would be great to know where you are watching it from. And I'm gonna start soon. Yeah, the numbers are going up right now. So just give me a few more minutes. Hi, yeah, first Sam. Also, hello from London. Great, I can see lots of you from London. Excellent. Abu Dhabi, wow, okay. Dorset, okay, now this is going really fast. Okay, cool. Somerset, okay, Northern Ireland, Isle of Wight, where I went for my half-term break. Cool, Brentwood, Sheffield, okay, cool. Excellent. Okay, just gonna wait 1 more minute. As long as I see the numbers going up, I prefer to start when everyone can listen it from the very beginning. Okay, Winchester, Swindon, New Malden. New Malden always makes me think about my favorite donuts because there is a Krispy Kreme factory. Okay, just 1 more minute. Ah, okay, Rosa. Yes, I know where it is. Yeah, cool. I used to work not far away from Discona in a primary school for many years. So I used to smell those donuts in the air at break duty sometimes. Okay, I think I can start now. So I'm going to share my screen. Just to say at the very beginning, I may not have time to take questions at the very end. But I'm gonna try to share as many strategies as I can. And let me tell you, there'll be more than 30. Actually, when I was running through my slide this morning, I still added a few ideas this morning. So I'm gonna try to give you many different ideas to become a MFL coordinator like no other. So my name is my name is Witold Woźniak. I'm not in school anymore. And thank you very much for joining this session today. So before I'm gonna start talking about different strategies, I would like to say a few words about myself. So I'm a lead practitioner at Kump Trust Academy. I teach across all the 4 key stages. The Academy Trust consists of 3 primary schools and 2 secondary schools. So I teach in year 3, 4, 5, and 6. But also I teach this year, I'm teaching in year 9 and year 10, but that changes every single year. I'm a mentor for ECT, that's a new term for NQTs and also for student teachers, and AQA examiner for the French-speaking exam. I'm a member of the Kingston and Merton Primary Languages Network, helping organize the termly training sessions for specialist, non-specialist teachers, including the annual Primary Language Conference. But I'm not only all about languages. So showing you a little bit of a human side. I love donuts, which I mentioned before, and my favorite ones are Krispy Kremes. I love Starbucks and fitness, and I presented sessions at the language show in London in the last 5 years. I also have my Instagram page at Witold Woźniak Fitness, which is about health, fitness, and nutrition. So just to give you an idea of roughly what I do and who I am, but today I'm here to talk about being an MFL coordinator and making a difference to your school. So if you are an MFL coordinator currently, there are two different reasons for that. One is that you are a specialist, or you are no specialist, but you have some kind of knowledge of the language. But very often, what happens in primary schools is that you are scapegoats because maybe you didn't have any responsibility and they just made you do it. So whatever whatever situation you are in, I tailored my delivery to show you some different ideas how you can make a difference and become an effective coordinator. So the very first statement I would like to refer to is failing to plan is to plan to fail. So what is very important if you are a coordinator is to plan to be one. So you need to have a plan. So my open question is, what is your plan for this year? And if I talk to you, and I'm not an Ofsted inspector, but obviously I will relate certain aspects of being a MFL coordinator to current Ofsted inspections. As we know, occasionally they do investigate MFL. If you are asked this question, what is your plan? I know it's a very vague and generic question, but what is your plan? What is your main point that you want to deliver or highlight in your delivery as an MFL coordinator this year? Just have a think about, and maybe some of the ideas I'm going to present in my next slides will provide you with some answers, but you should know the answer to this question. So the very first thing as a coordinator, you want to timetable it, which means that every class teacher should timetable whatever language you teach in your school, whether it's German, Spanish, French, or Mandarin, it should be timetabled. So it cannot be that, let's say, oh, we're teaching 40 minutes a language a week, or we teach 1 hour or half an hour, but it's not timetabled. If we know if it's not timetabled, most likely it's going to be always pushed on the side, and it's going to be done very occasionally. And again, let's say if you had an inspection, if it's not timetabled, you're not going to be, no one's going to believe that this is actually happening. So it is very important that as a language coordinator, you liaise with teachers, you make it very explicit, it needs to be timetabled, and you can ask, or if you have any shared folder in school, you actually check if every year group has timetabled the language lessons, whether it's a provision once a week or it's a provision twice a week, because let's say if you want to deliver 60 minutes a week, you can have, let's say, one session of 40 minutes, another session of 20 minutes, or 30. But that has to be decided on the school level, and it has to be recorded. Display it. Display is going to be something visible, and you want to display it across the school. So there should be some kind of representation of what's happening in your department on the school level, where you're going to include some keywords, maybe we're going to include some key information or information about competitions or different initiatives that you offer in your school. And I'm going to talk about it in the next few minutes. So you want to display it in school. So maybe there's going to be a board somewhere at your canteen or in the corridor, but also you want to have a class display where in every class there's going to be an element of the language. So whether students will be introducing themselves in a different language, or there will be hello in different languages. It doesn't have to only relate to the language you teach, because obviously we want to teach about the love for learning languages, and also we want to have this cross-curricular intercultural understanding element to it. So it can be very inviting, and you can include different cultures which are part of the class, but some elements of MFL, modern foreign language, should be part of every class. And this is again one of the checklists you want to tick in your box. Okay, is it timetabled? Is there a school display? Is there a class display in every classroom? So you can make different initiatives in MFL competitive And I'm going to talk about some school or class competitions you can organize. But I think thinking of competitions is always a very good starting point to make your department a little bit more dynamic and more engaging for the students, but also for the parents. So for instance, one example can be to use your school bulletin or newsletter and maybe announce certain competitions or initiatives, or you can have an expression of the week, or you can have key sentence of the month. For instance, I don't know, how to order a cheese sandwich in Spanish, or how to say have a nice meal. So whichever language you deliver in your school, you can always include it in your bulletin to make it more visible, and also engage parents in maybe checking, oh, what they are learning about today, or what is their key expression of the week. You can also use your school website where you can not only say what happens in your department, but also outline the scheme of work, and also include some students' work to make your delivery more visible. So not only on the walls of different classrooms or in the corridor, but also virtually. As we know, our reality has become much more virtual in the last 2 years, and lots of parents actually check the website and judge school, including Ofsted. The delivery is judged by the school website. So I think school website also is something you want to be updated and mention in your department. As a coordinator, you can organize some special days, and special days don't have to be always related only to the language you are delivering. Special days can be about celebrating different cultures, celebrating learning languages, maybe different strategies for learning languages. So for instance, when you have the European Day of Languages, or you have a school link, you can organize a special assembly, you can organize a school quiz, which will have some elements that you want, or some key information that you want your students to learn about. So for instance, here I'm showing you some pictures from a primary school I used to work at, where we did some fundraising for a school in Ghana. This is a Ghanaian teacher who came to visit our school. We had a special evening, cinema evening, where children could meet him, talk to him. We had some other class presentations. We had some food tasting. This food tasting actually is not from Ghana. That was a different partnership we were running, and children were able to try some Polish food, some Turkish food, some Italian food. So obviously this is just I'm showing you some pictures from different special days I managed to organize in the last few years, but it is very exciting, and lots of parents, especially in London, where you have lots of different communities, are very happy to share their foods, music, or maybe come for a day or a few hours to school and actually talk about different aspects of the school exchange or culture you are referring to. So I would strongly recommend, if you are a coordinator, have a think about a special day or a special assembly that you could deliver, and make your department a little bit, just interest your students in different aspects of learning languages or different cultures. I would definitely make it cross-curricular. So if you teach, let's say, French, it's not only about learning about France, but also every time, let's say, if I teach my primary students about how to order a drink, I wouldn't say, oh, now if you go to France, you're not going to be hungry. I usually say, so now if you, let's say, if you go to Ivory Coast or Switzerland, you will never be hungry. And that makes them think, oh, so do you speak French in Ivory Coast, or do you speak French in Madagascar? Very often they don't know about. And when you mention those kind of things, you also teach them a little bit of geography or maybe history, or you can relate when you have an assembly or a special quiz. In an assembly, you can ask some cross-curricular questions. So being a coordinator, I always think should be about promoting the love for learning. For instance, what I did in a primary school I used to work at, I created a section which used to be called French Takeaway, and every fortnight I would put different selection of activities that students could help themselves to, and sometimes parents, because that was what the school reception, when they were coming to school, maybe would take some worksheets for their children, and they were very vaguely linked to our curriculum provision, but students could access some worksheets, some word searches, some crosswords, some mazes, or coloring in pages, which had some elements of language learning, and it was actually quite popular. So again, sometimes promoting some simple games and offering an extra section where students can just come and help themselves, it's very welcome. So international links is definitely something that you may want to establish. It brings the language learning alive. And also you may include your students in some exchanges, and if students are not able to travel, you can maybe have some, especially now, I know we are in very tricky times, but sometimes teachers can visit your school, and it does make a difference when they can meet someone, ask some questions, or maybe when you can go to a school and then take some pictures, and after you come back, and not only being more motivated to continue this project or take it to a different level, but also share first-hand experience of being in a different country, being in a different school, and maybe taking some questions from your students what they want you to find out when you are there, and prove it with some pictures. So international links are very powerful. If you go to the British Council website, you can find lots of funding opportunities, and you can also, there is a section on the British Council website where it's almost like speed dating, where you select which countries you would like to be collaborating with, and you can obviously keep in touch and then apply for funding together. So I would strongly recommend you investigate this option. It is interesting, and it is interesting for everyone, and it definitely makes a difference to your department. So make it happen. I would say, if you're a language coordinator, try to make things happen. So obviously I'm giving you lots of different ideas today. Maybe you're not gonna take 30 home today, but choose best 5 from today and see how it goes. And then once you've done your first 5, then you can go to the next 10 or so. So MFL policy is something you want to have in your school. So just like any other subject, you want to tick the box for the MFL policy. If you have any inspection, that's going to be one of the first things they're going to ask you about. So you want to have your aims and objectives. You want to explain your curriculum provision, your assessment, how inclusive it is, and what you want to achieve by teaching a language or languages in your school. So for another thing, how you can involve not only students and parents is by organizing a staff meeting. So you want your staff members to actually know what is your expectation or your aim for teaching languages this year. So I would strongly recommend, if you haven't done it yet, that you schedule maybe 15 minutes. Obviously you don't need 1 hour about MFL, but maybe 15-20 minutes where you can sit with your colleagues and say, guys, have you timetabled it? What do you think should be our focus for this year? Is any class teacher happy to help me with assembly about this and that, or should we link it with what we study in geography in year 5, or is anyone studying something that we could relate to Spain or France or so on? So it's just bringing some ideas where you know, the more people you have on board working with you, the more likely it is it will become easier to be a coordinator, but also more people will be engaged in being part of the MFL provision. So definitely scheduling a staff meeting, maybe twice a year at the very beginning and maybe at the very end when you can wrap it up and also make a plan for next year. I would definitely recommend it. Networking is very important, and obviously language show is one of the networking opportunities that you want to access as a language coordinator, but maybe there are also some network meetings in your area, and also there are lots of different groups, Facebook groups, which you can join for MFL primary practitioners or secondary practitioners, and it does make a difference because you can share resources. You can also know what other teachers feel, how other teachers feel about maybe schemes of work or exams or assessments. So sometimes knowing different approaches does help you. It can be quite soothing or can be helpful if you are looking for some particular resources. So networking is definitely something which has become easier and something I would definitely recommend. Action plan. So referring to what I said at the very beginning, you need to plan what you want to do and you want to have an action plan. So what I used to do in primary school is I would have my MFL and international, spelling, I've noticed now, international action plan. And I would do it 3 times a year. So this is for an example of an autumn term plan, and actions for this term would be, so for instance, as you can see, I have a focus for assessment. So I would test 1 skill in year 3 and 4, 2 skills in year 5 and 6. So maybe I would do, let's say, only speaking in year 3 and 4, but I would do reading and listening in year 5 or 6. Then I would maybe use different percentages to give feedback to my students. I would say you're a champion if you achieve this percentage, very good if you achieve this percentage, good is 50, 69, and okay for 30, 49. So I would give some French targets. So I would print out the main key points that students will be learning about. I would keep them very simple. So for instance, a key target could be, I'm able to order a drink, I'm able to order a sandwich or an ice cream, or I'm able to ask about the price of 3-4 bullet points that students can take if they think they know it. Guided reading activities to be continued and monitored throughout Key Stage 2. What I mean is that very often in primary schools you have guided reading sessions, and that's also a great excuse for students actually to do some language learning, whether it is completing or finishing off work from their French or Spanish lesson. They can do some handwriting in French or German. So they don't have to always understand what they write, because handwriting can be done in any language. And it wouldn't be great if they were copying some keywords learned in the last lesson. They can actually create some handwriting sheets that can be copied during the guided reading session. European Day of Languages, terminal language or international assemblies, and French takeaway section to be updated twice a month, MFL competitions to be run thermally, to deliver a staff meeting about international projects, and to continue our partnership with Ghana. So this is my autumn term plan. And I know also I want to be ticking boxes at my end, knowing, okay, I need to organize a competition. I need to update my French takeaway section. I need to talk to my colleagues, and I want to make sure that something happens in the guided reading session. That's my plan. So for at the same time, so talking about the structure of your action plan, you also want to include outcomes from last term, just to show you're a reflective practitioner and you have a full control over what's happening, what's about to happen, but also you are reflecting upon what had happened. So for instance, from last term, so from last academic year, so maybe year 5 and 6 students were encouraged to self-assess and comment on their written work. French takeaway section was already happening last year. We had international assembly, so there was some kind of continuation. We had French and Spanish clubs, which continued into the summer term, and so on. So I just mentioned different elements of the MFL delivery that was happening last year. So you can put some X factor to it. What I mean is, so I mentioned lots of competitions. So I usually in September sit down and I make a list of different competitions I'm going to run throughout the year. You don't have to do it on a termly basis or monthly basis, but I do it quite often because I use the bulletin of school website to promote it. So for instance, in September, so I usually try to relate it to different seasons and different things happening. So in September, there was a competition called My French Monster, and they had to produce a poster, including an imaginary monster in French, and they had to label it in French, just to make it a little bit, to bring their creativity into place and to really encourage them to do something different, something maybe we don't have time to do in lesson. In October, they had to create a Halloween scary poster, they had to find some expressions in the French takeaway section I mentioned before. So I gave a few hints and I made a list of different adjectives. There was a game and a word search, which included some keywords that they could include in their poster. In November, for instance, this month, they are encouraged to do an alphabet poem. So all they have to do is to find at least one French word for each letter of the alphabet, and they have to decorate it. So it's not really a poem, it's more of a poster, but it is encouraging them to research different words, to use some dictionary skills, or to Google different words and to decorate it, because I mean, lots of students love decorating and coloring in. So as you can see, I have there is no competition for December because usually it's very short and it's usually all about Christmas. But as you can see, I have some competitions for January, February, April, and May. We have a translation challenge in January, language calligram competition, and a quiz about European French-speaking countries, which is going to be an assembly, and X Factor 2022. If students like to perform a song in a different language, it doesn't have to be in French, in any language they perform, and we have a panel of judges, and we have different categories: best choreography, best dance, best language, best group, best rap, and so on. Sky is the limit. Believe me, children absolutely adore it, and they want to perform. And it makes them sometimes learn some difficult songs as well. So I was definitely encouraged to bring some X factor to it. So international assemblies, something I mentioned before, but they don't have to be only language assemblies. It can be international assemblies where children can perform some dancing, traditional dances, where they can watch some short videos, and YouTube is a great mine of different videos that you can play to your students about learning languages, about Spanish-speaking countries, about the French Revolution, about 14th of July, about German cuisine, and so on. So your international assembly doesn't have to be you spending hours on planning, creating slides. No, you can just play a video which is 5-7 minutes long and ask some questions. You can even make it, sometimes I used to ask the students to come to my assembly with a whiteboard, or we used to have doodle books, and I would display some questions at the very beginning of an assembly. So I would say, how many French-speaking countries there are? And I would say, is it about 10, 30, or 80? And I would give some pre-questions before they would watch a video, or I would show some slides, and they have to be taking notes and give me the answers at the very end. So after watching a video, they will say, oh yes, there are about over 30 countries where you can speak French. Or let's say in Egypt is not a French-speaking country. So maybe I will challenge them. Can you tell me after watching this video, is French one of the official languages of Egypt? And they will say, no, it's not. But which other country was mentioned? Oh, they mentioned Senegal, for instance. So again, you can make it very engaging and very simple. So very low preparation, but lots of things can be learned from a very simple provision like that. You can also offer some clubs. So as a language coordinator, you can engage, you can bring some external providers to run a club, but also very often you can also have some parents who speak a language. So maybe you may have a parent who speaks Italian or who speaks Portuguese, and you can have, and we had a club in my primary school for a few years where I had a student teacher who was able to offer a different language as she was running a lunchtime club. We had a parent who was coming once a week to run a club in the school library. And, you know, it doesn't have to happen throughout the whole year. It can be, you can say, we have a Italian club run for 3 months. So you're going to be able to learn how to introduce yourself, how to order some snacks. So a practical approach. So it's like a very crash course club that's happening only for a few weeks. and you're more likely actually to have more commitment in a primary school, especially when it becomes very warm in the summer term. It's very difficult to have your club running. Because children want to play, and then we cannot blame them. But in in the autumn term or in the spring term, early spring term, to run a club from January up to Easter, it's more feasible and more enjoyable sometimes to be somewhere in a school library learning some Spanish or learning some German. Obviously, as a language coordinator, you want to record and have some evidence of things happening. So if you organize any assembly, if you organize any competition, please record it. Also, please record if you had any staff meetings or any minutes you want this to be recorded. Your evidence can be visual. So if you have any sharing drive in your school, you can use it. If you prefer to print it out, have a folder because again, you want to be able to demonstrate you are in charge and you know what's happening in your department. You can also make a survey, and this survey can be among your students. So you can choose a number of students, maybe student council, which can give you some feedback about the MFL provision in your school, what they like, what they enjoyed, how could be improved, what they would like to see. That can be also shared with some parents via the bulletin, or also you can make a survey among your colleagues, how they are finding the language provision in your school, how is the guided reading going, and so on. School library, which I mentioned before, where some things can be happening, is another section that you want to be MFL friendly. So probably in your schools, you have speakers of different languages, and I would strongly recommend that you buy some books in different languages. So different speakers, language speakers, they can access maybe some books in French, maybe some books in Polish, maybe some books in Portuguese or Mandarin or Japanese or Korean. So to show that your school is inclusive and that students can also access books in different languages. And what's great about that is that when sometimes students can see a book, let's say written in Korean or in Arabic, and actually see certain language patterns. If someone's interested in languages, it is interesting to see a book in a different language, or maybe they're going to see one of their friends reading a book in a different language and they're going to ask some questions. So encouraging those discussions and making it visible, having a specially dedicated section in your school library is definitely something I would take into consideration as an MFL coordinator. Obviously, you will be provided, you are usually provided with some funding as an MFL coordinator. I know you're not going to be assigned lots of money for that, maybe £200, maybe sometimes less, but still that gives you lots of flexibility. Yes, you can buy some books for that. Yes, sometimes you can organize or call in a theatre company. I know theatre company is going to cost more, but you can use partial funding from your budget and ask for a £1 contribution from the parents and say, oh, a French or Spanish theatre is coming to the school. Another excuse for promoting love of learning languages and doing something different and make it more engaging. What I used to do in year 6, I used to organize French breakfast because they used to learn how to order food and they used to learn a little bit more about French breakfast. So I used to go, not advertising Tesco, but I used to go to Tesco. I used to buy some croissants. I think they had 12 croissants for a very, very attractive price. And I used to buy honey or strawberry jam and orange juice. And what they had to do, they wouldn't get their croissant if they didn't order it in French. And they had to say if they want their croissant with jam or honey, and then they had to ask for an orange juice or water. So I didn't have time to serve coffee or hot chocolate, but I also obviously show some pictures how hot chocolate is served in France. And I would serve this breakfast to my year 6 students. In year 5, I would do cheese tasting where they would have to order some camembert and then they have to write an opinion whether they like it or not. So again, you don't need huge funding for that, but it is something they don't forget and they learn a lot because they don't only learn how to order some cheese, but also they know how it tastes. And before any cheese tasting, I would also make an introduction and I would say, guys, you may not like it, but if you were in a restaurant and if you were eating something you wouldn't be making funny noises. You wouldn't be doing, it's disgusting, because this is not how a gentleman or a lady would behave like. And you have to be open to other cultures. So it's an invitation to also teach them, okay, you may find the texture or smell very different from what you would normally eat, but you have to know how to be respectful and how to taste foods. So it's more than a language or learning put in place. Consider as external aids. What I mean by that is, obviously, I mentioned parents who very often speak different languages, who are very eager to share their cultural experiences, and they can be your guests for a special assembly. They can be your guests for special days. Also, if an embassy or a different organization is in your area, you may invite someone from this organization to come and talk about their offer, their language courses. Maybe there is a Spanish cinema or organization which organizes special events. It is interesting and it can, again, bring languages closer to your students' heart. So something which you need to think about if you're MFL coordinator is your native speakers, what kind of provision you are offering to your native speakers. So if you have any native speakers, do you have any books, for instance, in the school library? Can they listen to some podcasts? And how are they challenged in the lessons? They can be teachers' assistants sometimes, but also can they actually do some individual work? So it's what I would say, if you have some native speakers and you, let's say, teach Spanish in your school, a very good thing is to encourage the class teacher to make a phone call home and ask, okay, what do you think, how I could help your son or daughter learning Spanish? So because very often students actually attend some Saturday schools and they have some work they could bring to the lessons, because as a language coordinator or a language teacher, you want to demonstrate, you do differentiate for them. And yes, they will like to probably join some songs and some games, and not always working on the side. So we don't want to exclude them or punish them for being a native speaker, but I think being mindful of their skills, and also that maybe they should be practicing more writing and they have some work, or maybe they have a booklet or they have a book they could be reading in the target language, will be something that you want to be aware of, or something you want them to do occasionally. Assessment. As a language coordinator, you want to know how your students' skills are assessed. So if you have a system in place in your school, you want this to be happening in languages as well. However you record it, whether you give them grades, percentages, or meeting targets, or going towards targets, make sure it happens on a regular basis. Doesn't have to happen every half term, but you want this to happen a number of times throughout the year. So schemes of work, again, you want everyone who is teaching languages, whether you have a external or internal specialist, or there are class teachers delivering lessons in your school, you want them to be aware of the scheme of work and how it's sequenced, and so they can explain it. So again, I'm mentioning here a very scary word of Ofsted, but they will ask you this question: why using the scheme of work? Do you know the answer to that? Why is it sequenced? Why are you teaching numbers now, not colors first? So as a language coordinator, you want to think of some answers. And maybe when you organize this meeting at the beginning of the year, you will explain, we are using, for instance, this scheme of work because let's say we have an external provider and she feels confident and she is using this and that. So every class teacher knows students are learning from about this and that. If you're a class teacher, you want to be able to explain it by yourself. So you want to say, okay, I'm teaching now colors. So in the next term, when we learn how to name classroom objects, pen, pencil, students can describe, they can say it's a blue pen, it's a red pencil case, it's a pink rubber. So there is some kind of logics into your teaching. So you want to be familiar, every class teacher should be familiar. As a coordinator, maybe you want to create a table which is going to in a simple manner sequence different chapters that are taught throughout the year, so everyone can explain it. And for instance, Language Angels is just an example of a interactive scheme of work which you can pay for, and it gives you full access not only for students, but also for not only for teachers, but also for students. The great thing is they can like Language Angels, certain websites give you this outline for the whole year, and they can help you with planning. So sometimes considering an external provider that you have a subscription for on every year can help you with your planning, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. And if you have confident speakers, if you have external provider, you can go for something more specific. Obviously, so you want to be monitoring any happenings within your department. So let me give you one example. As a language coordinator, you want to be checking their books or folders. I'm a bigger fan of books. I think folders become very easily messy. It's easy to lose pages, but books, especially having the same book from year three up to year 6, is showing progression, and that's something that obviously everyone wants to see in languages. So it's sometimes easier, because when they get to year 4, you can always say, and we know how easy it is to forget certain words and expressions, is to say, oh, go back in your notes, see how do you say July? Ah, juillet. So and so on. So you can actually send your students to notes from previous years. When they get to year 5, they've forgotten how to spell quel âge as-tu, they can go back to year 3 and see how to spell it. So monitoring books can be done. If you are the only one teaching languages, you are, let's say, coordinator and also teacher of the language, you can ask someone, a different coordinator, your deputy head, to just, you can provide him or her with 6 different books and say, okay, can you notice any pattern, anything worrying or anything good? Can you write a few bullet points and you put it in your folder? So you are demonstrating your books are being monitored by someone else, you're getting some feedback, and you're self-reflective. So you want to have a coordinator folder, something I mentioned before, but this is a very important checkpoint. Have an assessment folder where your students' progression is recorded. And also another thing is trip and visit. I know I know that right now it is tricky. You're not gonna take your students for a day to France like before because of COVID testing and different implications, but that's something, as being more optimistic, it is something you want to happen. And it doesn't have to be an international trip, can be a visit sometimes to a place of interest which is related to some cultural understanding or language learning. There's French Institute or Spanish Institute in London, for instance, and you can visit those places. So you can go to a French cinema, or you can go for a Spanish meal. So I would strongly recommend you also investigate this option so students know, oh, this is happening, and learning languages is really exciting. So thank you very much for listening. I hope some of the ideas which I mentioned today are helpful. As I said, my expectation is you're not going to take 30 of them today, but try with the key 5 that you could try in the next term. Have a plan of action, discuss it, make it very explicit to your colleagues what's happening, and also make sure your parents know about how much you do. So the school bulletin or website will be your medium to communicate your ideas and engage with others. I'm just gonna click now on the chat option, which I couldn't see, but thank you very much. Thank you for everyone's thank yous. It was a pleasure talking to you, and I hope you're gonna find other sessions this afternoon useful. And yes, thank you everyone for listening, and have a great day. And a great weekend, and enjoy other sessions. Thank you very much. Rosa, you can join it. You can, I'm gonna type in, just drop me a line. This is my email. Drop me a line, and I'm gonna tell you how you can join it. Okay, so Rosa, just drop me a line and I'm going to tell you how you can join it. We are organizing a language conference in March, so you may want to join us. You are very welcome. But thanks very much, everyone. Thank you for your thank you so much. I appreciate. Thank you for attending my session. Thanks, everyone. Have a good afternoon, everyone. Thank you.